day, all year round.
It's so mysterious.
This is who we are.
This is who we are.
WADR. You can listen to us on 94.9 FM in Dakar through our website www.wadr.org. WADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's May Day in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Lagos. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa. Democracy Radio broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Major opposition political parties in Cote d'Ivoire voiced discontent with the Constitutional Council's validated candidate list.
The PDCI-RDA deeply regrets that the only alternative available to Cote d'Ivoire for a truly peaceful coexistence, namely peaceful change, has been sacrificed.
National Union of Petroleum Workers of Nigeria suspends industrial action following an agreement with Dangote Refinery. Gambia's President Barrow ends a state visit to Guinea-Bissau with several agreements signed, including security cooperation. And the security situation in the Kais and Nioro du Sahel regions of Mali within the West African region remains unclear. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Augustine Coley with Newslink.
Many thanks for being with us. Newslink begins in Nigeria as a major disruption to the fuel supply chain has been averted after the country's oil workers union suspended a two-day strike. The deferment followed a breakthrough agreement with the Dangote Refinery, Africa's largest oil processing facility. WADR's Abuja correspondent Usma Omar reports.
The strike by the Nigerian Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, NUPENG, had threatened to cause fuel scarcity across Nigeria and beyond its borders, where the country's refined petroleum products are in high demand. Union members, particularly tanker drivers, stopped lifting fuel on Monday in protest against what they described as attempts by the Dangote Refinery to block its drivers from joining their ranks. The refinery, which operates thousands of trucks, is considered a vital hub not only for Nigeria but for West Africa's energy market. After hours of tense negotiations brokered by Nigeria's secret police, that is the Department of State Services, both sides struck a deal late Tuesday. NUPENG President Williams Akporeha confirmed that Dangote Refinery has now agreed to allow its drivers to unionize. The strike had already taken a toll before the agreement was reached. Filling stations in several Nigerian states shut their doors, while operations at depots in Port Harcourt and Delta State were disrupted. Trucks were parked in depots in Lagos and Warri as drivers awaited further instructions. The Dangote Refinery, which only recently began operations, is expected to significantly reduce Africa's dependence on imported petroleum products, with an output capacity projected to supply markets from Ghana to Senegal. Analysts say any disruption at the facility could have ripple effects across the sub-region. For now, the suspension brings relief to Nigerians anxious about fuel shortages, but it also underscores the fragility of the oil sector as labor rights and corporate interests continue to collide in West Africa's largest economy. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Now, let's take you to Ghana, where an international trade expert is calling on the Ministries of Trade and Foreign Affairs to step in and resolve the growing tensions between Ghanaian and Nigerian spare part traders at the Abose Akin hub. The dispute, which has led to the closure of shops belonging to foreign nationals, is raising fears of further escalation. From Accra, Nadeditete reports.
The Nigerian Traders Association is unhappy with the closure of their shops. They argue that the Spare Parts Dealers Association has no legal basis to shut down businesses belonging to foreign nationals. Here is the president of the Nigerian Traders Association, Evaritus Inwako.
We've been all over and over, and we've been going on this thing over and over again since 2007. Where is it taking us? We need a peaceful Africa. We need a peaceful ECOWAS.
But the Abose Okai Spare Parts Dealers Association says the action is justified. According to them, it is meant to enforce Ghana's investment laws, which reserves retail and petty trading exclusively for citizens. International trade expert and executive director of the AFCFTA Policy Network, Louise Affle, has described the closure as unnecessary. He is urging the Ministries of Trade and Foreign Affairs to intervene swiftly and resolve the impasse to protect relations between the two trading communities.
There is a committee at Ministry of Trade. There is a committee that works closely with ECOWAS. And there's a committee there's a joint committee, I think, under the previous government that was tasked to engage in this cyclical issue I'm talking about. That committee should really be reactivated to quickly go back to resolve this before it spirals.
The dispute adds to long-standing tensions over Ghana's retail laws, with local traders demanding stricter enforcement while foreign traders insist on fair treatment. Stakeholders fear that without immediate dialogue, the situation could spiral into a broader trade conflict. For WDR, Nadeditete, Accra.
Let's now take you to Cote d'Ivoire, where tension continues to mount, with strong political figures and parties denouncing the validated candidate list for the October 25 presidential election. For many of the political actors, the Constitutional Council's decision demonstrates the weaponization of the justice system by the state. The two major opposition parties, PDCR and PPACR, have all reacted. Abdullahi Hassan has the rest of the details in this report.
The opposition PPACI reacted through its lawyer Habiba Toure during a press briefing held last night. Toure described the Constitutional Council's verdict as serious.
The Electoral Code seemed to be prioritized over the Constitution, and this approach is evident and undeniable. Article 127 of the Constitution confirms it, and you can verify this yourself. It's worth stressing that this Electoral Code was amended by none other than the head of state, Alassane Ouattara, who also happens to be the RHDP president and a presidential candidate. By choosing to rely on an ordinary text that was ultimately revised by the head of state, rather than adhering to and enforcing the Constitution, the Constitutional Council has undermined its role as the protector of the country's fundamental law.
PDCI, another major opposition party, raised its voice and contested the rejection of its leader's candidacy. Its executive secretary, Emu Sylvester, reiterated that Jan Cham had provided all the documents required by law on time.
The PDCI-RDA deeply regrets that the only alternative available to Cote d'Ivoire for a truly peaceful coexistence, namely peaceful change, has been sacrificed. The PDCI-RDA calls on its activists, the peace-loving Ivorians and inhabitants of Cote d'Ivoire, to remain resolutely determined for a Cote d'Ivoire of democracy and justice.
Vincent Toby Ire, the former prefect of Abidjan, who was barred from the presidential race, emphasizes the need to reshape the Ivorian identity through values like modesty, integrity, honesty, and faith in a brighter future. Out of the 60 applications submitted to the election body ahead of October 25, only 5 candidates were selected. Among them were 2 women, including former First Lady Simone Gbagbo, and 3 men, one of whom was incumbent President Alassane Ouattara.
Abdullahi Hassan with the details of WADR's Marcel Aristom Bled's report from Abidjan.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Well, elsewhere, the Gambia and Guinea-Bissau have signed a security cooperation agreement. This occurred during Gambian President Adama Barrow's second-day visit, that's two-day visit to Bissau, where he met his counterpart, Umaro Sissoko Embalo. The two leaders intend to cooperate to combat emerging security threats, including drug trafficking between their countries. However, the fight against insecurity cannot be achieved without Senegal's involvement, according to observers. Successful collaboration between the three countries should succeed in eradicating security threats within the region. Sankule Janko reports.
The cooperation agreement signed between Banjul and Bissau aims to counter security threats between the two countries. The region faces growing security challenges as well as drug trafficking. This agreement comes at the right time, according to Ibrahim Gassama, a journalist specializing in security issues in Casamance, southern Senegal.
These countries have historically faced threats from gunmen, whether for political motives or other reasons. Currently, these nations are often described as being in a ring of fire because of the jihadist threat. Many are unprepared to confront it, risking it impacting them directly. Additionally, other dangers like drug trafficking have heightened insecurity, especially in Casamance, where the MFDC phenomenon has contributed to instability.
However, the implementation of this cooperation agreement cannot be achieved without the involvement of Senegal, according to our source, who advocates for a tripartite agreement.
The Senegalese and Gambian armies have recently carried out joint patrols along the border, which I perceive as part of a more structured collaboration involving these nations, whether through bilateral agreements or shared initiatives. Gambia, Guinea-Bissau and Senegal face common challenges that demand collective efforts, and there seems to be an emerging sense of shared security measures among these countries, driven by the reality of the threats they face and the porous nature of their borders. If one nation prioritizes its defense while neglecting its neighbors, the repercussions are bound to affect everyone involved.
At the end of President Adama Barrow's two-day visit to Bissau, the Gambia and Guinea-Bissau reaffirmed their commitment to peace, stability and good governance in ECOWAS and across the continent. They both called for greater cooperation in tackling terrorism, organized crime and illicit trafficking.
Sankule Janko fight that report. Let's take you to Liberia as the European Union Special Representative for the Sahel is visiting the West African state to foster stronger collaboration in areas of peace, security and economic development. Speaking during a media briefing on Tuesday, Joao Gomez Cavino highlighted the urgent need to tackle border management challenges and the growing influence of climate change on migration trends. WADR's Monrovia correspondent Ibrahim Parker has the details.
The discussions centered on ways the EU and Liberia could collaborate to promote peace and stability in the Sahel region, while also exploring Liberia's specific security concerns. Cavino underscored the growing threat of trafficking, particularly human trafficking, driven by porous borders, and stressed the importance of implementing stronger border management measures.
And also to get a sense from Liberian interlocutors of security challenges faced by Liberia in order about the issues of the Sahel, but about also the region.
He further recognized the growing worries regarding potential spillover effects from the Sahel, especially in light of shifting patterns of arable land influenced by climate change.
There are, of course, issues related to bad governance, which go back decades. And some of these issues have roots in the colonial period. So there are issues related to climate change, and climate change has produced, of course, new lines of tension.
The visit of the EU Special Representative emphasizes the intricate links between security and development challenges faced by Liberia and the Sahel region. It underscores the critical role of international collaboration in tackling issues like border control, climate-driven migration, and land management. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa, the Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Major opposition political parties in Cote d'Ivoire voice discontent with the Constitutional Council's validated candidates list. National Union of Petroleum Workers of Nigeria suspends industrial action following an agreement with Dangote Refinery. Security situation in the Kais and Nioro du Sahel regions remains unclear. Still ahead, International Development Research Center urges the Senegalese government to implement measures to curb sexual, gender-based violence and enhance reproductive health. Still ahead, we have the press review, guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We are streaming live on YouTube at WADR and on Facebook, WADR English Service. A 5-year study by the International Development Research Center in Senegal has revealed that the Kolda region accounts for nearly 70% of female genital mutilation, FGM. The study also reveals that 50.7% of young girls experience physical violence and other gender-based violence such as rape and forced marriages. To protect the future of the Senegalese young people, stakeholders in the global health community are calling on the authorities to implement prudent reforms aimed at improving reproductive health while combating gender-based violence. Christopher Teacher was at the policy dialogue and filed this report.
For the past 5 years, the Improving Reproductive Health of Adolescent Girls in Senegal program, the ADOS research, has been focused on building capacity and generating evidence-based linkages on the interactions between gender-based violence and adolescent reproductive health. The study revealed that the Kolda region in the south of the country accounts for 70% of female genital mutilation, FGMs. The research also seeks to collaborate and develop effective policies to protect adolescents from gender-based violence and improve their health. Speaking at a policy dialogue, the regional director of the International Development Research Center, Marie-Glorious Ingabere, stressed the need for an Ubuntu approach to safeguard the nation's productive sector.
This issue of gender-based violence and adolescent reproductive health has also a big component in terms of socio-cultural practices, like the female genital mutilation. There is a good law, but if communities are not embracing the change, you will not see that happening.
With funding from Global Affairs Canada, Director of International Cooperation at the Embassy of Canada, Caroline Aube, called for greater advocacy for combating sexual gender-based violence and its worst form of femicide.
I think that's the worst form of abuse that you can think about, that someone loses his life just because of its gender. So it's important to talk about gender equality. It's important to talk about women's rights. It's important to talk about human right protection and find avenues and find a solution that help us as a society to move closer to a just, fair society.
The policy dialogue offered an opportunity to present recommendations including access to quality reproductive health and data to the Senegalese authorities for reforms.
Christopher testified that report. Well, in Mali, the security situation within the Kai and Nioro du Sahel regions remain unclear. A week after the blockade by JNIM, the group supporting Islam and Muslims, the narratives on the ground are still contradictory. While the army claims that this is not the case, a veteran supported in Kai and in Nioro du Sahel, the reality is largely hidden from the public. Imo Edit has the details in this report.
According to a resident who prefers anonymity, people are freely going about their normal businesses in the city of Kai. He stated that the announcement of a blockade imposed by JNIM is just a rumor, adding that transport vehicles and freight trucks continue to circulate on the Bamako-Dakar axis via Kai. The Malian army said it is patrolling the area, even though the road conditions remain difficult to navigate, he added. In Nioro du Sahel, there has been panic since the kidnapping of several residents by fighters from the group supporting Islam and Muslims. This is the status quo on the ground, says a source who we were able to reach. The situation is very worrying. People are afraid to travel, but they are trying to hide the reality. Our source laments it's pure propaganda. Video broadcasts on national television show soldiers patrolling the road to Nioro du Sahel, claiming that the situation is under control. Recall last week the group supporting Islam set fire to numerous fuel tankers on several roads, particularly in the west of the country. Faced with the persistent threat, a transport company has decided to suspend its operations to ensure the safety of passengers. While the army continues to reassure the population of these areas live in fear daily. The population in these areas live in fear daily.
That's Imo Edit with that report.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Let's join Sankule Janko for the press review coming from the Gambia.
Let's begin today's newspaper review with the Alkamba Times. And the lead story on the Alkamba Times is that of tragedy, and it reads: a fatal generator blast at Serekunda General Hospital kills young oxygen plant worker. That's the tragic lead story on the Alkamba Times. Coalition of CSOs condemns Pura's price floor, demands justice and dropping of charges against released protesters. And in sports, for the Alkamba Times, the Gambia triumph over Burundi in World Cup qualifier. Let's head to the Standard newspaper. The lead story on the Standard reads: Fatou Jaumane, why I want to run for president. Fatou Jaumane is a former journalist who has declared her intention to run for president. That's the lead story on the Standard newspaper. UDP select flag bearer today. It is expected that the opposition party leader will select their flag bearer today. Meanwhile, registration fees for political parties raised to $2 million. Let's move on to another newspaper and take a look at the stories making headlines on the Point newspaper. And the lead story on the Point newspaper talks about the opposition UDP, and it reads: Gambia awaits who will lead UDP into 2026 polls. Let's head to the Fourier newspaper, the final newspaper for today, and the lead story on the Fourier newspaper talks about agriculture and the plight of provincial farmers, and it reads: rice farmers in CRR sound alarm over government neglect. But interestingly, another story on agriculture reads: farmers in CRR South anticipate good harvest. This other one reads: the court finds 2 foreign nationals for attempting to obtain Gambian passports fraudulently. And finally, this one reads: National Assembly presses on with elections bill review. These are the major stories making headlines on Gambian dailies. It's back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Sankuli, for the press review from the Gambia.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
We take you back to Nigeria as a major disruption to the fuel supply chain has been averted after the country's oil workers union suspended a 2-day strike. The deferment followed a breakthrough agreement with the Dangote refinery, Africa's largest oil processing facility. Our guest is Joyce Lane Nkete Ada, an oil and gas analyst in Nigeria.
The first thing you should understand is that the government really needs Dangote refinery. Our national refineries are not working. They are all not working. The three major national refineries are shut down. Dangote refinery practically is the only refinery that is refining oil in Nigeria. And that is why you saw that immediately the government got involved with this whole issue in the first place, because Dangote refinery is very important to the country right now. Now, you should also understand that the cost of fuel in Nigeria is one of the biggest bother to the people. Nigerians are not used to paying so much for fuel. So the hope Nigerians had was that the coming on board of Dangote refinery was going to crash the price of fuel, and that is still the hope they have. So that is why, I mean, the union issue, if you look at it, it had nothing to do with the government, but they had to get quickly involved with this to resolve this, because they know that this is the assumption of Nigerians.
What can you say about why Dangote didn't want his staff to be unionized?
Okay, because when they make demands and you don't meet their demands, they could really hold you by the neck. Let me use that word for a better word. They could really, hold you to ransom. Now, not having them in a union, for instance, if they were not affiliated with any union and they had demands, Newpeng would not go on strike for them, because Newpeng would say, you're not part of the union. So if they had gone on strike on their own, it would affect only about 2 or 3%, if not even less, of Nigerians. But having them unionized is going to really have a big say in the daily activities of the refinery. If they say, oh, we want better wages, and Dangote says, oh, I cannot give you better wages. The authorities of Dangote say, we cannot give you, better than what we are giving right now. Now, if they go to the union, of course, the union would look at it and say, okay, yeah, we feel your demands are right, they're just. If the union join forces and say, okay, we would shut down, we are not working anymore, definitely that affects a whole lot of Nigerians, like just what you just witnessed.
Has there been a track record where the government addressed these concerns raised by the various unions within the oil and gas sectors in Nigeria?
No, there haven't been that. The unions have never made any request that has been outrageous. When they make their demands, it's just basic things they ask for. I think a year ago, they wanted better roads. They were having a lot of accidents on the roads, and this was taking a lot of lives and properties. And they said, okay, this is happening because we don't have good roads.
How do you think an addition to the already existing unions within the oil and gas sector in Nigeria will help address the challenges that they continue to face?
If for anything, it's even a win for them having Dangote people come on board with their union. Why is this? If, for instance, there's a demand made and Newpeng shuts down and Dangote is still supplying, the effect of their shutdown would not be felt so much. So having one voice, unity, is even better for them. It even pushes home their points the more, so that once they have one voice and they make a demand, so the government will have no choice but to respond to their demand. But again, their demands have always been met? Of course, the answer is no. Their demands have not always been met.
Joyce Lane Nkete Ada is an oil and gas analyst within Nigeria. Now, in the world of sports, there are interesting results from yesterday's encounters with regards to African teams participating in the FIFA 2026 World Cup qualifiers. Senegal triumphed over DR Congo 3-2 at the 90th minute. That was within the 87th minute. That goal was scored by Pape Sall, who brought the hope to Senegalese from far and near. Well, between Togo and Sudan, Togo managed to win Sudan 1-0. Mauritania and South Sudan settled to a goalless draw. Zimbabwe and Rwanda, well, Rwanda triumph over Zimbabwe with a 1-0, though they play away, but they were able to overcome the home side Zimbabwe. South Africa and Nigeria settled to a 1-1 draw. It was a very tense match, and that match was very important to Nigeria. However, South Africa is a very, very critical side, so playing at home meant a lot to them and a very critical moment for Nigeria. So it remains a very tough zone for the Super Eagles going against the Bafana guys within that group. Well, Benin defeated Lesotho 4-0 so far. And that's the latest in the world of sports. With that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here in West Africa, Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Ismaila Kamara for the technical assistance. I am Augustine Cully. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about